Hi, I'm Maddie, Hale, and welcome to the Trump Report. Today I've got former Clinton and Bush advisor Steve Gill on the show for the first time. And just a reminder that you can watch us every day, Monday through Friday, on Times Radio's YouTube page, or you can stream us as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
I want to start off with Donald Trump. He's landing in the UK tonight for his state visit. There has been a lot of concerns over his recent scandals related to Jeffrey Epstein and everything that's come out of that birthday trip. So there's worry that that might taint his state visit, especially as the UK ambassador to Washington has recently been sacked over here because of his ties to Epstein back in 2008. So do you see this trip reigniting this Epstein scandal for Donald Trump, or will he be smart enough to, I guess, avoid those headlines?
I think the connection that Trump had to Epstein was very limited compared to those who were actually traveling to Epstein Island, who had longtime relations. And keep in mind that we've learned that Donald Trump was one of those who was actually cooperating with authorities and helping turn in and expose Epstein for his sordid sexual behavior. So I think President Trump is on solid ground in denying any really scandal type connections to Epstein. I think the bigger issue with Trump's visit is it comes just days after the massive rallies on Raise the Flag in Britain, and Trump has shown support for the conservatives, for reform, for Farage and others, and I think that is going to what will make the meetings with Starmer, who is on very thin ice politically in England, and his meeting with King Charles, when King Charles has even shown at least some dissatisfaction with the Starmer government. So I think those are the issues that will have more impact on Trump's visit than any connection to Epstein.
Especially as the UK and the US really try and work together on a lot of global conflicts happening right now. Steve, you're right. It might be overshadowed by the fact that there is a lot going on the global stage. But I want to move into a more of domestic front. Now, it's timely having you as someone who does live in Tennessee on the show to talk about this. Donald Trump on Monday, he said he's sending the National Guard in and other law enforcement to Memphis to crack down on crime in the Tennessee city. Trump said that the task force will be a replica of our extraordinarily successful efforts here, and you'll see a lot of the same thing. This team will deploy the full powers of federal law enforcement agencies and enforcement generally to restore public safety and get dangerous career criminals off our streets. We're going to get them off. Now, Steve, Trump was highly criticised for this approach when he implemented the National Guard into Washington, D.C. He was accused of abusing his power. So what is your reaction from Donald Trump deciding to do this again in another city of the United States?
Well, first of all, he had more authority to do it in Washington, D.C., because it is a federal territory. And I think we look at the results. I mean, you've seen murders go to virtually zero in Washington, D.C. The crime level has dropped dramatically. They've arrested and detained and deported hundreds of criminal illegals, violent illegals on the streets. And Washington, D.C. is much safer now than it was before the troops were deployed. And I think that what we're going to see is that the people in Washington love what was done. I do find it weird that you have the left, Democrats, who are protesting on the streets in favor of crime. I did not have that on my bingo card. And now we're looking to Memphis, which has the highest murder rate per capita in the U.S. And I think the governor and other leaders in Tennessee want this to happen, and I think we'll see the same results in Memphis. My concern, Maddie, is what happens when the troops leave. The drug dealers, the thugs, the criminals in Washington, D.C. have not evaporated. They've gone to ground while the troops are patrolling, in addition to the local police authorities. I think the same thing may happen in Memphis. They will round up some bad guys. They will arrest them and detain them and deport them. But when the troops leave, is Memphis going to suddenly be safer and more crime-free? And I have my doubts about that.
Well, Steve, yeah, you mentioned that Memphis has the highest violent crime rate in Tennessee and in the United States, which is a fact I didn't know before prior to Donald Trump making this announcement. But Memphis's Mayor Paul Young, he voiced opposition to this plan from Donald Trump. So he doesn't want this happening. But what I wonder is, on your point of what happens after, when Donald Trump implements the National Guard, what does it say on how the US government feels about the strength and confidence in their local police forces? Does it undermine their authority? Does it undermine their skills?
You know, it's really not an issue with the local police authorities. The police on the street, the cops on the beat, are doing the best they can, but we have catch and release judges who literally are letting violent criminals free before the police officers can finish filling out the paperwork. So it is not that the police officers are not competent and capable. In many cases, they're outmanned. Their numbers are lower than they should be. And it's the authorities, the local government authorities like Paul Young in Memphis, who have done nothing to make Memphis safe. Memphis has been a city controlled by Democrats for decades. They have not made progress in increasing prosperity, reducing poverty, reducing crime. Memphis has some of the worst schools in the state of Tennessee, despite spending more per student than any other city in the state of Tennessee. So the problem is not that we don't have good teachers or good cops. The problem is we have really bad local government. And I think that's why President Trump is having to step in to try and supplement what the police can do with extra manpower.
Regardless of which party is in charge of Tennessee and Memphis, Steve, I know that you're not exactly in Memphis, but you're of course a Tennessee local. But is crime politicized in the sense that on a bipartisan level, everyone in Memphis can agree that there is a crime problem? It's not so much that Democrats think that the local government, the local police department have done an amazing job. It's more that everyone can agree that there's a problem with crime.
Sadly, Paul Young doesn't agree. He claims that crime has gone down in Memphis because, again, if you let the criminals go and don't jail them, they can talk about less jail time. If you don't count crimes, as we see in so many of the big cities in the U.S., they don't turn in their crime statistics to the FBI for national crime statistical data to be gathered. So Mayor Young is saying that Memphis is safer. The people in Memphis don't think so. The crime rates in Memphis in terms of carjackings and muggings and murders continue to be high. So unfortunately, Maddie, everybody doesn't agree that crime is a problem. And it is those who have a political agenda to downplay it or to ignore it that want to stay in power more than they want their streets to be safe and clean. You have major companies looking to leave Memphis, like Federal Express, because their workers are not safe. You have professional sports. The Memphis Grizzlies are a National Basketball Association team, the NBA team. They're looking at leaving Memphis because their downtown location doesn't make it safe for those to buy tickets and go to games. So Memphis is on one far end of the street, but Nashville, where I live, is in the center of the state, and it is almost as bad as Memphis. Not quite as bad, but Memphis is certainly at the top of the list when it comes to murders and carjackings, rapes, and other violent crimes, and the mayor denies it.
Yeah, and it's tough, Steve, because Memphis and Nashville, as you say, are very big tourist destinations for the country music scene. I've been to Nashville. It's one of my favorite cities in the world, as I've told you. So I would hate to go back there 5-6 years later and feel incredibly unsafe, because it's obviously such a deterrent from visiting cities. And of course, even London has issues with crime. There's a lot of phone thieves on the run, which has become a huge talking point. But let's move on to Donald Trump. He has sued the New York Times. Again, he said that for $15 billion against the paper, 4 of its journalists and Penguin Random House over claims that the New York Times and this book, Lucky Loser, How Donald Trump Squandered His Father's Fortune and Created the Illusion of Success, published lies and fabrications about him. This is his 3rd time suing the New York Times, who haven't responded yet. But your reaction to this, Steve?
You know, Trump has been very successful in suing these media outlets because they have gone so far off the rails with their Trump derangement syndrome, thinking they can just lie with impunity. And already he's collected several judgments against these media outlets. I would agree to some extent that those who say that Trump, certainly in his first term, squandered opportunities because he did not fill his cabinet. He did not fill his administration with people who were committed to his policies. He did not, I think, understand, coming from business into politics, that personnel is policy. And he left soft, squishy Republicans in place who were not supportive of his policies. He left Democrats in place, and he failed to fill spots in our government, thinking it would save money rather than putting in people who, at the assistant secretary, deputy assistant secretary, all of those bureaucratic appointed spots, would put his policies first. he has changed that. And we have a cabinet this time that is all, I guess to use a rowing example, they're all rowing in the same direction. And that's why we're seeing the results, both in the economy, in terms of making policy progress. And you've got a Congress in the House and Senate that are Republican that are also lining up with Trump policies. And I think he's being much more successful now than he certainly was in his first 4 years.
But Steve, even though he's the only sitting president who's ever even filed a lawsuit against a major media outlet, he actually hasn't won any of these cases. He uses it as a threatening tool to show publications that they can't write everything that they want to. Is this kind of the thing that he does? It's his way of, I guess, trying to control the media by throwing out lawsuits.
I think he's wanting to have them be honest and truthful. And I think he has not won cases to a judgment in court because they've settled and written massive checks because they know they will be on the losing end when they've said things that are provably false. We have, and I put on my lawyer hat for a moment, we have laws in the U.S. That make it difficult to win a case if you're slandered as a public figure. You have to show actual animosity. You have to show actual intent to lie or misrepresent under what's called the Sullivan decision. And in these cases, Trump has been on solid ground that these big media publications, and including television networks, have written millions of dollars of checks rather than be faced with the fact that they knew or should have known that what they were putting out there were absolute slanderous lies. And I think you'll continue to see his success in getting settlements rather than these folks wanting to head to a judgment in court, because that would establish new legal precedent that might make them even more vulnerable to others that are in the public arena.
And there's a reason why presidents haven't done that in the past, because it can be considered political suicide to do so. But Donald Trump, he beats to his own drum. And
Maddie, Donald Trump is a once-in-millennia politician. Keep in mind, this
Don't
guy
I know it,
defies
Steve?
gravity constantly, where he does things or says things that have killed careers of other politicians, and he just keeps moving forward and being successful. Keep in mind, this is a guy that once got in a spat with the Pope, and the Pope backed down. This is not what you normally see. And I think the challenge for Republicans is, what is a post-Republican Party? What is a post-political arena without Trump look like for the Republicans? He cannot be replaced. He is a figure that is larger than life. And I think that one thing Republicans have to be concerned about is, how do you follow Trump? Because nobody, even a J.D. Vance, that's perhaps the heir apparent, has that political charisma, that personal charisma, that strength to just plow through no matter what gets thrown at him and be successful. So Republicans should be concerned.
See, I'm on the other end of that, Steve, to play devil's advocate in the sense that I think he is so much of a personality and so much of a taxing figure that I feel like the Republican Party bow down to everything he does, and they're silent on a lot because they're worried about what he thinks. And if I take even Lindsey Graham's sanctions bill as an example, which seems that it's gone quiet completely because he's trying to tiptoe around Donald Trump. And of course, there's reasons as to why that is. I'm not completely bad-mouthing Trump. He wants to do it a certain way to get a deal over the line. But it does seem as though Republicans have always been scared. I mean, what did we see before he officially ran for the 2024 election? We saw several Republicans calling out for new leadership, and as soon as he gets a nomination, they're silent again.
Yeah, I think it's two things, Maddie. First of all, he is right on the issues. Again, one of the strange things about the Democrats right now is on issues that are an 80-20, 85-15 gap in terms of polling of the American people. The Democrats keep taking the 15 or 20% side and doubling and tripling down. So Trump's advantage is, not only is he a larger than life figure who will remember who crosses him and extract revenge at the appropriate time, but he's also right on the issues in terms of the American people. And he has the ability to pick the right side of those issues. And that's also, I think, what causes some of these Republicans to fear challenging him. But you're right. He is running the party. He's running the country. And MAGA is a force that is bigger than the Republican Party. I mean, the folks that are supporters of Make America Great Again and Donald Trump are not necessarily Republicans. And I think that gives him a clout bigger than political partisanship, and again, makes Republicans fearful. We see the same thing on the left. Democrats cannot challenge their radical woke base, even though it's relatively small. But they are so fearful of losing in the primary contest that they have to cater to the far extreme left, which is, frankly, in my view, helping to destroy the Democratic Party right now. And there are those in the Republican Party that can't challenge the far right in the conservative arena because they are fearful of losing a primary as well. And particularly if Donald Trump weighs in and picks a candidate in a Republican primary.
You're right, Steve. It's two extremes, and that is a prime example of 2024 election, seeing the Democrats really not listening to their base and going to one extreme. But yeah, I do think it's an issue on both sides of the political aisle where there's two extremes right now, and some Americans, a majority, are kind of wanting a middle ground approach to politics. But let's move on to kind of Donald Trump on the world stage when it comes to Putin, because this is something where where a majority of people would believe that he needs to be stronger, he needs to be firmer. Now, President Zelensky, he sat for an interview with Sky News this week. He said he's hopeful for a clearer position from Trump when he meets with Keir Starmer this week. He said, I believe that the US is strong enough to take decisions of their own, but I believe that Donald Trump can give us air defense systems in quantity, and the US has had enough. They have enough. I'm sure that the US can apply enough sanctions in order to hurt the Russian economy, plus Donald Trump has enough force to make Putin afraid of him. Europe has already introduced 18 sanction packages against Russia, and that's lacking now. What is lacking now is a strong sanctions package from the US. So, Steve, do you think Congress would sign off on another package, an air defense package to Ukraine? And do you think that we will see Trump finally following through with further sanctions the way that he has been threatening for months?
I think that the American people are absolutely exhausted with continuing to fund endless billions for Ukraine, particularly when they hear so much about the corruption, the loss of money. Where has the money gone? Lindsey Graham and others refuse to allow any kind of an accounting or any kind of a verification of where the money has gone, and yet they want to keep filing and pushing bills that provide endless payments to a corrupt Ukrainian government. The other problem, I think, from the sanction standpoint is Russia is the most sanctioned country in history, and yet their economy is stronger than most of the EU, most of Britain, Europe, European countries like France and Germany. Their economy is stronger than those who are imposing these sanctions. And I think President Trump recognizes that the sanctions haven't worked and that the battlefield strategy of NATO hasn't worked. You had General Kellogg, one of Trump's advisors and representatives, claiming that Ukraine is winning. You have everybody else acknowledging that is false. You had Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, claiming a few months ago that Ukraine is winning. The front lines are just moving in the wrong direction. That's the most insane statement in history from a guy who supposedly has some understanding of both military and global politics. So I think the frustration from the American taxpayers and from Trump is that we're not seeing results. We are seeing wasted tons of money.
Well, I think American people have, on various polls, indicated that they do believe that Putin needs to be stopped. They do believe that Trump needs to be firmer. And the thing is that I've had multiple military analysts on this show tell me every week that Putin isn't winning the war the way he claims to be. I mean, they've had 1 million casualties and only made 1% of gaining more land of Ukrainian land since November 2022, and they've done a lot with the little resources they have. But Steve, I understand your point of view in terms of funneling more money into the war, especially after Iraq and Afghanistan. A lot of Americans quite literally voted in Donald Trump because they wanted an America First policy, as you said. But I don't really believe that Trump has followed through with that promise, because he has gotten himself involved in quite a few. But I think that the US involvement in the Ukraine war has been beneficial. But I do want to read out that Keith Kellogg quote from you that you mentioned, because he basically said he told Trump before the Alaska summit and since then that Ukraine is winning the war. And he said if Russia was winning, they would have they'd be in Kiev, they'd be in the Dnipro River, they would have been taken Odessa, they would have literally toppled the Ukrainian government and taken Ukraine already. And that he told Trump to not believe what Putin is saying, that they're not as good as Putin says. So do you think we will see Trump listen to Kellogg? Do you think we'll see Trump come out and throw his complete support around Ukraine, especially when it comes to this written document that would say that the United States will provide security assistance to Ukraine if there's another invasion?
I don't think that President Trump will put American boots on the ground. And frankly, you're looking at NATO countries balking at putting their own men and women on the ground and letting them be swept up in the carnage. I hope President Trump does not listen to Kellogg, because Kellogg is just wrong. There's another general, Jack Keane, that you hear on Fox News and other outlets always talking about Ukraine is winning, and that if we don't stop Putin where he is right now, he'll be in Berlin, he'll be in Paris, he'll be in London in just a matter of weeks. That is completely inconsistent, Maddie. On one hand, they claim that Russia cannot advance. On the other hand, they claim that they'll be in Paris in 2 weeks. So which is it? Is the Russian military that weak, or is their argument that weak on behalf of the threat to Europe? Jack Keane is another one of those who is heading an institute that gets most of its funding from the military-industrial complex. And General Jack Keane, another of these generals who keep pushing the continuation of the war, heads a company that sells the military Humvees. These guys have financial interest. They should be wearing the advertisements of their companies on their suits when they appear on television networks to let people know their real biases and their real profiting from the continued carnage. I don't think President Trump will put troops on the ground. I don't think President Trump will move forward with more sanctions because they haven't worked. And he is continuing to say this was Biden's war. He has brought an end path to it. And Zelensky still keeps wanting to argue Ukraine being in NATO, which is a dead start, stop for the Russians. He is continuing to claim that they are winning on the battlefield. The bottom line is Russia has not wanted to take Kiev. They have wanted to take the areas that are Russian leaning, Russian speaking, Russian identifying, and they have done that.
They have been striking Kyiv, and I have to jump in there, Steve, and say that the sanctions have been working. They've crippled a lot of Russia's economy, and they're really struggling to keep up with. Various analysts have told me that if the sanctions keep going, Putin won't be able to afford his war for another 12 months.
Well, he's selling oil now to India, to China. And I hate to tell you, but the Europeans are going to be freezing to death come December and January without that Russian oil. And President Trump now pushing our allies like India into the arms of China and Russia is bad global politics. And again, I think President Trump is getting very bad advice in that regard. So I think, again, when you look at the sanctions impact, what it has done is create, I won't say enemies, but certainly adversaries like China being pushed together. The BRICS nations are growing in numbers. The de-dollarization plan they have is growing in likelihood because of the policies we've had towards, quote, isolating Russia. It hasn't been working, and it is something I think President Trump recognizes.
Well, we'll see if we get any more updates on the sanctions this week, Steve, and if Keir Starmer and Donald Trump discuss this, because he has said this week that he wants these NATO countries, Hungary, Slovakia and Turkey, to stop importing Russian oil. And then if this happens, and then if we see NATO countries also putting tariffs on China, then the US will as well, the same way that they've done to India. So we'll be watching to see if that happens this week and what aftermath of this visit, the state visit in the UK. So Steve, Gill, thank you so much for joining the Trump Report today.
Thanks, Maddie. Good to be with you.